Welcome back. In this lecture, we are going to learn about one of the most fundamental concepts in CSS, the CSS box model. Understanding the box model is absolutely essential because it explains how elements are displayed on the web page and how much space they take up and how we control that space. So let's take a closer look at how it works. So what exactly is the box model? The CSS box model defines how HTML elements are displayed and sized on the web page. The basic idea is very simple. Every element on the web page can be thought of as a rectangle box, and inside and around the box we have different parts, that is content, padding, border and margin. So let's start with the content. The content is simply the actual content of the element. For example, it could be text, images, a table, a video, or basically any other content inside this element. The border goes around that element. Already used borders before. And one important thing to remember is that the border is technically still a part of the elements itself. And comes the padding. It is basically an empty space that we could create inside an element. More specifically, padding creates space between the content and the border. And now we have margin. Margin is similar to padding because it's also create an empty space, but there is one important difference. Padding creates space inside the element. Meanwhile, margin creates space outside the element. So we usually use margin to create space between different elements on our web page. Simply we can remember that padding is inside and margin is outside. So another one is the fill area. This is one more concept that we should understand, and this one can be slightly confusing. Remember that text and images are inside the content area. But what happens when we add an background color? That background color does not just appear behind the text. It fills the entire visible area of the element, including the content and padding. It fills the entire visible area of the element, including the content and padding. So the background color or background image covers much more than just the content itself. This is what we refer to when talking about the element's fill area. Now, it's all of this still feels a little abstract, don't worry. There is a real useful real world analogy that we could make the box model much easier to understand. Imagine that we have this picture hanging on the wall. The actual picture inside the frame is our content. Then imagine that there is some white space between the picture and the frame. That space is called padding. The actual frame surrounding the picture is the border. And finally, imagine that there is some empty space between this frame and another frame hanging next to it. That space is our margin. Now let's move on to another very important part of the box model. How does CSS calculate the final width and height of an element? As you can see, the final element width would be the left border plus left padding plus width, and the right padding and the right border. As well as for the final element height, top border, top padding, height, bottom padding and bottom border. We can specify all these values using CSS property. This is the default behavior, but we can change it, and that's the basic foundation of the CSS box model. This is one of the concepts that might feel a little theoretical at first, but once we start using padding, border, margin, width and height in our actual project, it will become much easier and clearer. So now that we understand how the box model works, let's start using these properties in the next lecture.